Hey guys, my name is Brianna Jackson, and today I'd like to discuss why Black representation is so rarely accurate in the mysterious realm of society that we call pop culture. And I'll focus specifically on the problematic aspects of cinema. So, I wouldn't call myself a movie fanatic per se, but I've seen my fair share of films as well as the reviews and individual scenes that can be found online. Being a woman of color, it's always been an obvious and unfortunate truth that there aren't really a variety of role models that Black people can look to in Hollywood in terms of characters who reflect the demographic of the community. When depictions of people in any sector of media is unrepresentative, it creates a normalization of what is presented. In America, it is a normalization of upper middle class white culture. Thus, the stereotypical representation of minorities that we are exposed to become the sole lenses outside of our daily lives from which people in our society are socialized to believe that constitutes the characteristics of entire races and ethnicities. And this isn't just some conspiracy theory that we've come up with. Oftentimes, the characters in movies who display the diversity in personality and behavior that is generalizable to the audience are white characters. And as we know, white people aren't the only people watching movies. From the 2012 American Moviegoing Report, we find out that 12% of moviegoers are Black, which is a little under the 13.2% that Black people make up in the U.S. population. In the 2014 Hollywood Diversity Report from the Ralph J. Bunche Center for African American Studies at UCLA, they indicate that minorities are underrepresented by a factor of more than 3 to 1 among lead roles in film. Now, a common critique of this disproportion argues that it is a natural result of minority actors and actresses, and in relation to our topic, Black actors and actresses not pursuing acting in the same amount of numbers or talent as white people. The increasing popularity of this ideology was spearheaded by Pharrell Williams, a well-known producer in the music industry who, when interviewed by Oprah Winfrey, claimed that he represents a new Black, which by his perspective is someone who doesn't allow their skin color to create boundaries for them in the industry. Although he comes from the music industry, his ideas can be applied to that of the film industry. Now let's take a look at his response to the outcry that ensued after this statement.
You told Oprah Winfrey you're a new Black. And I just wondered what you mean by that.
Well, it was
because again, a lot of people have been wondering what you mean.
Well, no, it's just
Black if you're a new Black.
Well, no, I can't point to anybody else. The only thing I can tell you is, my experience in being Black is that, like, I love what I do, I love who I am, and I make no excuses for what I look like and what that means to me. But I don't, I use my mind for my opportunities. I'm not looking for anyone's help because of my skin color. I don't see, my skin color as some affliction or something that holds me back in the world. I am proud of my skin color, and at the end of the day, anything that I do, I celebrate who I am, and I celebrate what my mom and dad made, and that is a new way of looking at my life. But can I speak for the whole entire culture? No, I can't.
Now, while I agree that no one should allow their skin color or heritage to affect their view of their own potential, it is dangerous and harmful to ignore the social context and the business environment in which those opportunities are presented. From the UCLA Diversity Report, we find that among film directors, minorities were underrepresented by a factor of 3 to 1, and among film writers, a factor of 5 to 1. Considering that these barriers to equal representation remain constant across the varying doors of opportunity in Hollywood, we have to realize that there may be a lurking factor here other than the supposed lack of interest or effort by the Black population. When you look at the possibility for profit, it has been shown time and time again that appealing to a larger audience allows businesses to yield a higher profit margin. This implies that we are not facing a capitalist issue, one in which that producers and CEOs are simply doing what is in the best interest of the company's growth. This is an ideological problem.
Hi, we're here with Professor Darnell Hunt, director of the Ralph J. Bunche Center for African American Studies at UCLA. Dr. Hunt has his 2014 Hollywood Diversity Report. Dr. Hunt, your findings.
Well, I think the major finding is that there's a major disconnect between what's happening in the Hollywood industry and what the society looks like in America.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, we have a disconnect in terms of the representation of people of color and women in staffing positions in Hollywood, behind the camera as well as in front of the camera in terms of lead roles. And we also have a disconnect between Hollywood's professed interest in profits and the bottom line And our finding that indeed shows that are more diverse actually do better in terms of their ratings, and movies that tend to be more diverse, or at least that get close to reflecting America's diversity, do better in terms of box office and return on investment.
Why is there a disconnect at all?
Because the industry is so high stakes, because people are trying to keep their job, they're trying to, if it's a TV show, keep the show on the air. If it's a movie, trying to get funding for the film, they tend to surround themselves with people with whom they feel comfortable, because they need to be able to depend upon the team and know that the project's going to get made, it's going to get made on time and high quality. What that tends to result in, if you're starting with a lot of white males, is they tend to surround themselves with other white males for the most part, which becomes kind of a vicious cycle for people of color and for women who have a hard time breaking in and proving their worth.
If you had to pick one place to start, where would you start? Would you start in the studios? Would you start at the agencies? Would you start someplace else?
Well, there's no magic bullet here. This is a pretty intractable problem that we've been talking about for decades. This is not a new phenomenon, and it's not like the first time we've talked about this. What's new about our report is that we document quite comprehensively, all these different arenas within the industry and exactly what's wrong and where the disconnects are. I think that it really does require a multi-frontal assault in terms of, these different areas that have been lagging. All of them need to be dealt with simultaneously. Everyone needs to pull their weight. You can't put it all on the studios, you can't put it all on the talent agencies, and you can't put it all on the networks. I think they all play a role in the underrepresentation.
So, as Hunt stated, this is an issue that is salient throughout companies and their various levels of power. These agencies serve as the gatekeepers of Hollywood. If the higher-ups don't find it appealing to create a more diverse roster, they will continue hiring the people that look like them, which just so happen to be white males. In a statement by the Diversity Report's co-author, Anna Cristina Ramon, she explains, "There are certain major projects that you just don't get to be part of unless you have a connection with one of those top agencies. Or maybe you get to be a part of it, but you're not going to be the lead. So the tendency of top agencies to back their talent rosters with whites really restricts access to opportunities for underrepresented groups." So what about the actors, the visible results of all the company's efforts? In the HuffPost article titled "Lucy, Why I'm Tired of Seeing White People on the Big Screen," Olivia Cole discusses her condemnation of Hollywood film. She states, "I can't accept that there was only one black woman in the entire film, who delivered one line and who we never saw again. I can't accept that the bad guys were Asian and that although in Taiwan, Lucy's roommate says, 'Who speaks Chinese? I don't speak Chinese.' I can't accept that in Hercules, which I also saw this weekend, there were no people of color except for Dwayne Johnson himself and his mixed-race wife, whose skin was almost alabaster. I can't accept that she got maybe 2 lines and was then murdered. I can't accept that the primitive tribe in Hercules consisted of dark-haired men painted heavily blackish green to give their skin, head to toe, a darker appearance, so the audience can easily differentiate between good guys and bad guys by the white skin versus dark skin. I can't accept that during the previews, Exodus, Gods and Kings, a story about Moses leading the Israelite slaves out of Egypt, where not a single person of color is represented, cast Sojourner Weaver and Joel Edgerton to play Egyptians. I can't accept that while my daily life is filled with black and brown women, they are completely absent, erased when I look at a TV or a movie screen." So in this quote alone, Cole highlights the whitewashing of American movies. Black people are essentially erased from the screen. Not only is it offensive, but it takes away casting opportunities from people of that race or ethnicity and makes them into supporting characters. If black people aren't even allowed to play people of their own race, what hope do they have? Even with vanguards today like Justin Simien and his recent production of Dear White People, we cannot expect these movies to solve the greater issue. There is still a lack of accurate representation of black characters. Black people are often portrayed as common tropes like the magical Negro, whose level of importance is dependent upon their potential for being used by and supporting the leading white character. The angry black woman, who is dehumanized and disrespected. It creates the expectation that black women are naturally inflammatory, and that the only way they can create a space for themselves in film is by acting as a point of mockery in comparison to the commonly more rational and level-headed leading white character. The black best friend functions in the same way as the magical Negro, but without the superpowers. They simply serve to give intermittent blurbs of relationship advice and act as the caretakers of the leading white character's ego or safety. The thugs are ever present. Gangbangers, rapists, drug dealers, robbers, pimps, and much more. They fuel the racial stereotype that black people, most often black men, are dangerous criminals who lack morality or reason. and the domestics. They are supporting roles commonly played by black women. It perpetuates the trope of the mammy. These character storylines remain static while they propel the leading white characters through a more dynamic plot. These stereotypes serve to do more than support white actors. They also act as pacifiers. They allow producers, directors, and CEOs to create the illusion of representation. When these black tropes aren't being utilized in negative depictions, they are morphed into roles important enough to be distinguished from extras, but not complex enough to reflect cinematic autonomy and break away from a cycle of pigeonholing black actors and actresses. We must also remember that black directors are subject to pigeonholing as well. In an interview with NPR, Gina Prince Blythewood states,
"When it comes to black films, many point to the year 2000 as a transformative moment. Director Gina Prince Blythewood brought us Love and Basketball."
I'll play you.
What?
One game, one-on-one.
For what?
Your heart. Check.
That film did not fall into old stereotypes, drugs, violence, the plight of living in the ghetto. It was simply a love story between two people who happened to be people of color.
14 years later, Blythewood is out with another love story. Beyond the Lights became a film festival darling earlier this year, seen as a black film likely to reach crossover audiences. Blythewood, though, doesn't like that term.
Black film, that term allows studios to just marginalize a movie and say, we've made our black film. We've made our film with people of color in it, as opposed to, I just feel like people of color should be in every genre.
Although the term could be seen as a way of creating a space for filmmakers to depict a rich, thought-out, and fresh perspective on black culture, it also allows companies to use these so-called black films as pacifiers. So what can we do to solve this seemingly invincible issue? When working on the grand scale of a whole society, we have to start small, and that begins with ourselves. At the individual level, it benefits us all to remain educated and aware, taking courses on black pop culture and media, reading articles on black representation, participating in those not-so-comfortable discussions on how race affects America. All of these things and more help us to become knowledgeable enough so that we are no longer being socialized to consider the lack of diversity or the stereotypes to be normal. At the community level, we can help support black businesses. This includes small film agencies, film directors, producers, actors and actresses, managers, everyone who is working to break down barriers for which systemic racism has created the foundation. For these people, it is about infiltrating the industry. We must continue bringing awareness, questioning what we consider normal, and breaking ground. Gina Prince Blythewood comments on why diverse images are so important.
I wonder if you can address a potential tension here. You're saying this is not black film. You don't like there to be a genre that's called that because you're dealing with universal themes.
Yes.
But you feel like you need to be sticking up for black actors and actresses to make sure that they are considered and given a fair shot. How do you do both of those things?
It's just about putting people of color in every genre and making it become normal. When the Cosby Show came out and everyone was up in arms about the Cosby Show and that it was reflecting a world that didn't exist. But I knew black doctors and I knew black lawyers and I knew families that, had a mother and a father and kids that were well behaved. So right now there's a perception in the world that black people don't love each other, that they don't get married. And it's because we don't see it. There are never any images of that in TV and film. And without those images, young black people have nothing to aspire to, and the world continues to perpetuate this myth about the lack of black love. So it's just important, again, for me to make us visible in film and television. I really think it can improve the world, and that's really my drive.
The myths of the domestics, thugs, the black best friend, and the lack of black love are working against the black community. And although there is not a concrete or quick solution to solving the lack of diverse representation of black people in film, by bringing light to the tragic reality of the industry, we are making steps toward progress.